My son pointed at me and told the waiter, loud enough for the table to hear, "Don't serve him." Laughter flickered from one end. A few guests looked over. No one spoke. My hands froze on the folded flag resting beside my chair. Not one voice rose for me. Not even his. The waiter hesitated, then straightened. He saluted. Gasps rippled through the room. What else had my son planned for tonight? And who had taught him to look at that flag and see nothing but cloth? The next morning, the coffee machine hissed, just like it always had. But something about the aroma didn't land right. Bitterer, maybe. Or maybe that was just the quiet. The house creaked the way old wood does after a night of late summer rain. But the silence between the walls wasn't natural, it felt chosen. I sat at the kitchen table alone. The folded American flag lay exactly where I'd placed it the night before, on the corner of the credenza beneath the window. A sunbeam hit its surface, making the deep blues look almost black. No one acknowledged it. No one asked. The clock ticked too loudly. The fridge hummed like it was the only one breathing. My son, Dean, walked into the kitchen wearing a crisp shirt and carrying a briefcase. He didn't look at me, just reached for a banana and the protein bar beside it. "Morning," I said. He nodded vaguely. "Yep." No eye contact. No warmth. Just that one syllable slicing the air like a paper cut. Diana, his wife, followed in behind him, already dressed, her hair tied back tight like every thought was under lock and key. She didn't speak at all. She passed by me like I was furniture, worse, actually. Furniture gets dusted. "You two heading out early?" I asked, trying to soften the stiffness. "We have meetings," Dean said, opening a drawer. But it wasn't the drawer that mattered. It was what slipped out when he tugged it too fast. A thick white envelope fell to the floor, and the second I saw the logo, my stomach clenched. First Eastern Credit Union, the bank I'd used since '93. My name was printed on the front in bold. I reached to pick it up, but he moved faster. "I've got it," Dean snapped, grabbing it before I could. He shoved it into his briefcase without looking at me. That wasn't normal. "Why is my bank sending mail here?" I asked quietly. He paused. For just a breath. "They've always had this address on file." "No, they haven't," I said. Diana finally spoke, but her voice was airless. "Maybe it's a mistake. I'm sure they just haven't updated it." But I had updated it. 2 months ago. After Martha passed, Dean zipped the briefcase. "We'll be late." And just like that, they were gone, leaving behind their silence, the bitter coffee, and the envelope that didn't belong. I stood in the hallway after they left. The house echoed with their absence. The rooms I'd helped paint 10 years ago now felt rented, borrowed, not mine. I walked over to the living room mantel to check on the small wooden frame that had always stayed next to the family photo. A portrait of my older brother in his dress blues, the same man whose flag now sat folded on the credenza. But it was gone. The space where his photo had always rested was empty. A faint circle of dust outlined where it used to be, like the shadow of a man erased. I checked the bookshelf. Nothing. I opened the side drawer beneath the TV. Nothing. Finally, I opened the lower cabinet, where we kept old board games and magazines. And there it was, face down, in the dark, under a stack of outdated newspapers. The glass was cracked. No note. No explanation. I pulled it out, brushed the dust from its frame, and stared at the crack that ran right across his chest, right through the metals. That night, I barely touched my food. The casserole was warm, but the room was cold. I brought the cracked frame to the table, placed it beside my plate, and waited to see who would notice. No one did. Dean scrolled through his phone. Diana passed me the salt but didn't look me in the eye. "I found this under the games," I said evenly. "Thought it belonged somewhere else." Dean glanced at it. "Oh, yeah. Sorry about that. Must have fallen." "Must have," I echoed. Diana started gathering plates before I'd even finished my meal. "We've been reorganizing." "Right," I said. "Well, maybe don't reorganize my brother." That got her to pause, but not enough to speak. Dean stood, carried his empty plate to the sink, and said, "We've had a long day. Can we not?" Later, I returned the flag to my room, placing it on the dresser near the lamp. I turned the photo bright again, next to it. Martha would have said something. She'd have called out the silence, pointed out the rot underneath. Instead, I sat there alone, brushing a thumb along the star-stitched fabric and wondering when my presence had become so optional. That night, as the wind pressed against the windows, I realized the coffee wasn't what had changed. It was the house. Or maybe it was me. It was supposed to be just another Saturday. Birds chirped, lawnmowers buzzed down the street, and the smell of charcoal teased the air from 2 backyards over. I had offered to help Dean set up the patio table for the small barbecue they planned. Nothing big, just 2 neighbors, 1 coworker, and a pastor from church who'd done the family's wedding and Martha's funeral. Dean said it was low-key. But as I walked out back with the cooler, I heard my own name. "Dad's not going to help," Dean said flatly. "He barely knows what's going on anymore. He's just extra." I froze behind the garage wall. Diana's voice floated back, softer but sharper. "He's a burden, Dean. Let's stop pretending he isn't." The cooler slipped from my hand. Not hard, just enough that it thudded on the concrete. Everything went quiet on their side. I didn't move. Then footsteps, one said, approached. Dean rounded the corner, wearing a tight smile, like someone who just stepped on glass and was pretending not to bleed. "Need help with that?" he asked. "No," I said, voice low. "I've got it." I carried the cooler to the backyard and set it by the grill. My hands felt heavier than the ice. The guests arrived around noon. Smiles, hellos, a few handshakes. No one asked where the folded flag was. I'd left it in my room this time. Pastor Ray clapped my back gently. "Good to see you out and about, William." "You too, Pastor." The neighbor, Mr. Ellis, handed Dean a 6-pack and said, "Your dad still keeps a better lawn than half the block." Dean laughed, but there was no warmth behind it. "He tries." I smiled faintly, but that comment stuck like something lodged in the teeth. An hour in, the conversation split into smaller groups. I sat under the patio umbrella, sipping water. Diana and her friends gossiped by the kitchen island. Dean grilled burgers with Ellis and the coworker Rick. That's when it happened. Rick glanced my way and asked Dean, "So, is it tough, having your dad around full-time?" Dean didn't hesitate. "Honestly, yeah, he's old school. Doesn't get how the world works anymore. We keep him around out of obligation more than anything." The words hit harder because of how casually they were said. Obligation, like I was rent, like I was a bill. The group chuckled awkwardly. Ellis cleared his throat. Rick muttered something about getting another drink. Pastor Ray said nothing, but I saw his eyes shift from Dean to me to the empty chair where Martha should have been. I stood, walked into the house, and poured myself a glass of water. My hand trembled just slightly. Enough to notice, not enough to admit. Diana passed by me without stopping. "Everything okay?" "Just thirsty," I said. She hesitated only for a second, then went out the sliding door again. I looked toward the living room. On the side table sat my folded flag, right where I'd moved it that morning. But something was different. The frame of my brother's photo had been turned again backward, this time facing the wall. I walked over, turned it back around. The crack across his metals still stared up at me. Later that afternoon, Dean came into the kitchen to grab more buns. I met him there. "We need to talk," I said. "Can it wait?" "No." He looked at me, irritated. "All right. You said something out there. About obligation, about me being a burden." He shrugged. "It's not like it's not true." "Then say it to my face, not to your guests." That stopped him. I pressed on. "You invited neighbors, a pastor, your coworker, and in front of them you told them your father's presence is an inconvenience." His jaw tensed. "Look, you live here for free. You don't work, you don't pay bills. What do you expect me to say?" "I expect you not to humiliate me in my own family." He snorted. "This isn't your family anymore. You're just here. That was it. Not the loan. Not the missing photo. Not the flag tossed around like decoration. That evening, after the guests left and Diana was loading the dishwasher, Dean came to the hallway with a piece of paper in his hand. I've been meaning to talk to you about this. I looked at it, some kind of household agreement. Rent expectations, boundaries, medical directives, all of it unsigned. I need you to make a decision, he said. Either you contribute, or you find your own place. I didn't respond right away. Instead, I walked into the living room, picked up the folded flag, held it in my hands for a few moments, and then set it down gently on the coffee table. Dean followed. Dad, I'm serious. I finally turned to him and said, you don't get to write me off and still use my name on loans. His face paled, just a bit. I added, we'll talk about that soon. But for now, I realized something chilling. This house wasn't turning against me. It already had. The call came at 9:43 a.m. I was sitting on the back porch, sipping the coffee I'd brewed myself this time. Stronger, less bitter. Mr. Halbridge? The woman on the other end asked. This is April from First Eastern Credit Union. We just wanted to confirm your recent second signature on the refinancing paperwork for the Greenwood property. I blinked. What paperwork? There was a pause. Sir, the documents were submitted 2 days ago electronically. It listed you as the co-signer for an equity line of credit. $60,000. Attached to the Greenwood property. Is that not correct? My mouth went dry. No, I said. It's not. Another pause. Would you like to initiate a fraud review? Yes, I said. Immediately. The call ended, but the ringing didn't stop. Not in my ears. I set the phone down, walked inside, and stared at the family wall. Photos of Dean and Diana's wedding, their baby shower, my retirement party, all framed in wood. None of Martha, and not one of me. Only one photo still included me, the one where I was handing Dean the keys to the house I'd co-signed for. The same house I'd just learned he'd refinanced again behind my back. I found the folder he kept bills in. It was in the kitchen drawer near the oven mitts. I'd seen him put envelopes there before, but never looked. Inside were neatly arranged documents. Utility bills, insurance, some tax notices, and 2 copies of the refinancing paperwork. Both with my signature, only I never signed them. That evening I waited. Dean came home around 5. Diana followed, grocery bags in hand. I said nothing at first, just watched as they moved around me like I didn't exist. Until I spoke. Got a call from First Eastern. Dean stopped mid-step. Diana's hand stiffened around the grocery bag. Oh, Dean said. Everything all right? They said I co-signed something. Dean exhaled, annoyed. Right, yeah. We've been meaning to talk to you about that. I didn't sign anything. Well, it's your house too. They just needed you on the form. It's standard. You forged my signature. Diana jumped in, voice clipped. It's not like that. I turned to her. Then what is it like? She glanced at Dean, then back at me. It's a loan. For improvements. For the baby's future. There is no baby, I said. And it's not your house. Dean snapped. You're living in it, aren't you? You use the water. You eat the food. Don't act like you're some victim. I stepped closer. I paid off that mortgage 10 years ago. You two let it rot, and now you're selling pieces of it back to the bank with my name attached. He slammed a drawer shut, hard enough that a fork rattled off the counter. You think this is still yours? You're not entitled to anything anymore. The words hung in the air like smoke. I looked down. On the counter beside him was the folded flag. Not where I left it in my room, but here, tossed on a stack of coupons like it was clutter. I picked it up carefully, as if it might break. Dean didn't even flinch. You know what this is? I said. Diana sighed. It's from your brother, we know. You talk about him all the time. No, I said. It's not just from him. It is him. That flag is all I have left from the man who carried me through our father's funeral. who taught me how to hold a rifle and how to fold a shirt. Dean rolled his eyes. We're not disrespecting it. You left it next to the garbage. I stared at the two of them. Strangers. Or worse, thieves. And still, I was the one made to feel like I didn't belong. Later that night, as I sat on the porch again, the wind colder than the forecast claimed, I remembered the moment I first handed Dean the keys. It was after Martha passed. I'd told him, "This house is yours now, but take care of it like you'd take care of her." I meant the house. I meant the memory. I meant the family. But he took it literally. And he sold the whole thing back to the bank, piece by piece. I slept with the flag beside my pillow that night. For the first time, it didn't feel like a memory. It felt like a warning. They used my name for money. But soon, they'd learn what it sounded like when I used it for something else. It was supposed to be an ordinary dinner. Meatloaf, peas, too much salt in the gravy. Diana set the table in silence. Dean sat with a beer, scrolling through his phone. No one looked at me. The folded flag rested beside my plate, not to provoke, not to preach, just to remind them I still remembered who I was. Dean set his fork down halfway through the meal and said, "We need to talk." I didn't respond. He reached into the drawer behind him, pulled out a thin white folder, and laid it on the table between us, like a challenge. "Go ahead. Read it." I didn't touch it. "What is it?" I asked. "Transfer paperwork. We're moving the house title officially. Makes it easier for taxes. Insurance, too." Diana added, "It's a clean handover, Dad. Nothing shady." I slowly opened the folder. Inside were 3 pages typed, notarized, and with 2 blank spaces for signatures, mine and theirs. "It says I relinquish full ownership," I said. Dean leaned forward. "Yeah, because technically, you're not doing anything with it. We need legal clarity if something happens to you." "Something like what?" "You're not getting younger," he said bluntly. "And this is just smart planning." I closed the folder. "This isn't planning. This is erasing." Diana stood and began clearing plates, as if that ended the discussion. Dean stayed put. "You live here rent-free. You've been using our car. You have groceries on the table." He kept his tone even, measured, rehearsed. "I think it's only fair we put things on paper." "You mean take everything and give me nothing?" Dean's jaw clenched. "That's not what this island—" "No," I said, "because from where I sit, it feels like a trap, polite enough to look like a choice, sharp enough to cut like an ultimatum." He stood. "This isn't a request anymore." Diana returned to the doorway, drying her hands. Her eyes didn't meet mine. Dean's voice dropped, colder than I'd heard before. "You either sign it, or you leave. Tonight." I looked at him. For a long time, no words, just memory. Of the boy I taught to ride a bike, the young man I helped through college, the trembling husband whose hand I held when Diana miscarried 5 years ago, the man I hugged when he called me from the hospital, crying with joy after his daughter was born. That man was gone. This man was a stranger in my son's skin. Diana finally looked up and said it, the sentence that broke the room. "It's time, William. You're not needed here anymore." I didn't speak. I walked to the living room, picked up the folded flag, and sat on the edge of the couch. They didn't follow. I held the flag like a final photograph. All corners tight, the seams still crisp. I imagined my brother, his hands folding it for the last time. A military honor. A goodbye with dignity. And now, here it was caught in the middle of a family trying to divide itself like property lines on paper. 10 minutes later, I returned to the dining room. The folder still lay open. A pen now sat beside it. Dean said, "Just sign." I looked at the pen, at the empty line with my name beneath it. I picked it up, then smiled, and placed the pen back down without using it. "Thank you," I said. Dean blinked. "What?" "I appreciate the clarity. Are you signing or not?" I turned and walked toward the hallway. Without a word, in my room, I opened the closet and pulled out the old green suitcase Martha used for our trips. The one with the broken zipper that only worked if you pulled it slow. I laid out shirts, socks, the razor I still used by habit, a small wooden box of old letters, and the flag. I wrapped it in one of Martha's cardigans, the lavender one. Still smelled faintly like her. Diana stood in the hallway when I emerged, suitcase in hand. She didn't try to stop me, just said, "Where will you even go?" I smiled faintly. Where people don't ask that question. Dean stood behind her, still holding the folder. "You walk out that door. Don't expect to walk back in." I paused at the threshold, then said, "You wanted me out, just not like this." I stepped into the night air, the suitcase wheels bumping on the concrete. It wasn't cold, but it felt like winter. The porch light flickered once, and then went out behind me. And just like that, the house I built, the son I raised, and the future I trusted turned into a shadow behind a closed door. They thought I would beg. Instead, I smiled and reached for my suitcase. The motel room smelled like bleach and last chances, the kind of place where forgotten men go to remember who they used to be. 2 lamps, 1 bed, a shaky air conditioner, and curtains thick enough to keep the past out. I laid the folded flag gently on the dresser. Its edges looked sharper in this lighting, tighter, like it was holding itself together better than I was. The woman at the front desk had called me sir twice. No judgment, just courtesy. First time I'd heard the word in weeks. The room wasn't home, but for now, it was freedom. The morning after I left, I got a call. "Pastor Ray." "William," he said, hesitant. "Everything all right?" "I've had better weeks." "I heard. Well, Diana said you'd had a fall, that you were confused, that maybe you needed professional help." A beat of silence. "She said you'd left suddenly, that you weren't thinking clearly." I didn't answer right away. Then I said, "I left because I was thinking clearer than I have in years." Pastor sighed. "I figured as much. Just a few folks have asked. I wanted to check on you myself." "Appreciated." "And William?" "Yes? They're saying you left with your brother's flag. That's not just a keepsake, is it?" "No," I said. "It's the only proof I ever stood for something." That same afternoon, I met with my lawyer, Ken Bradley, old family contact, had done Martha's estate paperwork, a man who believed in eye contact and handwritten signatures. I laid the refinancing documents on his desk. He scanned them slowly. "Your signature's here," he murmured, tapping one sheet. "But this isn't your stroke. The G in Gregory always loops left. This one loops right." He pulled out a form. "This is authorization to begin a fraud investigation." I signed it without blinking. Then he looked at me and asked, "Do you want this handled quietly?" I shook my head. "No." He nodded once. "Good." That evening, I walked to the diner near the motel. Small town place, greasy floors, bigger hearts. Used to eat there with Martha every second Sunday. A waitress named Nancy served me a club sandwich with extra pickles and free coffee. "You doing all right, Mr. Halbridge?" she asked. "I'm breathing." "That's half the battle." She smiled at the flag sitting on the booth beside me. "I remember when your brother passed. That was the first funeral I ever cried through." I nodded. "Still got that strong jaw of his," she said. I smiled faintly. "It's stiff with age now." As I was leaving, she added, "He'd be proud of you, you know. Not for serving, but for standing." Back in the motel, I received an email. It was from Diana. "We've contacted an attorney. You leaving voluntarily means you forfeited certain rights. Any attempt to challenge our use of shared property will be considered harassment. We have video proof you're unstable." Attached, a short clip of me refusing to sign the document, cut mid-sentence. Me turning away. Her voice saying, "He's confused, Dean," off camera. It wasn't a legal warning. It was a trap. Ken called 2 minutes later. "They're setting up a paper trail, painting you as senile. If they succeed, it could limit your testimony. You need to act fast." I told him about the video. He sighed. "That helps them. But it also helps us." How? Because they're already panicking. People don't build narratives unless they know the truth's coming. The next morning, I went back to the diner. Sat in the same booth. This time, I didn't hide the flag. Nancy didn't say a word about it, just gave me free pie. Halfway through my meal, two men walked in, neighbors. One of them nodded respectfully. The other gave me a look that wasn't quite pity, but close. Then I overheard them whispering at the counter. Thought he'd lost it. No, man. Diana made it sound like he ran off. Well, rumor is, he left because of that house loan. They used his name. You serious? Guy paid off that place years ago. I didn't say a word. Just took another bite of pie. By the time I walked out of that diner, I knew three things. I had a lawyer, a lie, and a flag that meant more now than ever before. The motel ceiling had a water stain shaped like Texas. I stared at it for hours that night, thinking of all the small ways they'd chipped away at my dignity until I stopped blaming them. Blame is what victims use to stay still. I wasn't still anymore. By 6:11 a.m., I was wide awake with the motel coffee burning my tongue and my laptop open on the tiny desk by the window. The folded flag sat beside it, a quiet witness. I didn't play music. I didn't open the curtains. I just pulled up the accounts. All of them. Dean didn't know I still had access. He assumed when I left everything behind. But I hadn't. The mortgage account was listed under both our names, his as primary, mine as cosigner. A relic from when I handed him the house and stayed on, just in case. The in case had arrived. I opened the payment portal and unchecked autopay. One click. The screen froze, then refreshed. Autopay disabled. My hand didn't shake. I clicked cancel future payments. Another confirmation window popped up. Are you sure you want to cancel all scheduled transfers? Yes. Confirmation received. The click of the enter key sounded like a gunshot in a silent field. I moved to the next account. Their car insurance, something I'd co-signed when Diana couldn't qualify a loan due to a missed payment from her 20s. Click. Cancelled. Next, the grocery account. A joint debit card we'd used for household expenses when Martha was still alive. I'd left it open for emergencies. Click. Frozen. Their financial lifelines had been built on the quiet assumption I would never say no. Today, I didn't say a word, I just stopped saying yes. I sat back in the motel chair. The flag still lay folded, untouched. I stared at it for a while. Remembered the day it was handed to me at my brother's funeral. The weight of it. The way the soldier's hands trembled slightly. The way he whispered, on behalf of a grateful nation. Gratitude had a sound. Entitlement had one too. It sounded like silence after betrayal. Later that afternoon, I called the bank and removed Dean as an authorized user from my personal account. You sure about this, sir? The clerk asked. Yes. Reason? Because some things are earned, not inherited. That evening, I returned to the diner. Nancy served me sweet tea without asking. I sat near the window this time. Outside, a familiar car pulled into the parking lot. It was Rick, the coworker from the barbecue. He spotted me through the glass and gave a nervous smile. I nodded, just once. He came in, didn't sit at my table, but paused before heading to the counter. Mr. Halbridge, he said, just wanted to say, some of us didn't know the whole story. If I'd known back then, I wouldn't have laughed. I nodded again. No bitterness, just acknowledgement. Some people find truth late, better late than never. Back at the motel, the silence felt different. Not lonely, strategic. Not defeated, prepared. The flag sat on the pillow beside me, the same way Martha used to. Tonight, it wasn't memory. It was momentum. By tomorrow, their phones would ring, their bills would bounce, and my silence would be deafening. By Wednesday, my phone had 2-3 missed calls. 11 from Dean, 9 from Diana, 3 from a number I didn't recognize but knew came from their neighborhood. I didn't answer a single one. The motel hallway echoed like a tunnel every time I walked it. The vending machine down the corridor had a rattle in the coin slot. like it coughed before giving you what you paid for. I liked that machine. It was honest. It made noise when it owed you something. People, on the other hand, preferred silence when they were guilty. I sat in the corner booth of the diner again, facing the window. The folded flag rested beside my plate, wrapped in a soft cloth to keep it from touching the table directly. Nancy came by, poured coffee, said nothing. We had developed a rhythm. No pity, no small talk, just familiarity. Dean's first voicemail was predictable. "Dad, I don't know what you did, but the mortgage didn't go through. You need to fix this, now." The second was sharper. "You think you're hurting us? This is on you. You're being stubborn and vindictive." Then came Diana's voice, tight and rehearsed. "We're not going to let you destroy what we've built just because you're angry." "Built?" I almost laughed. "I built it. I laid the first brick when Dean was in diapers." The days blurred into the quiet tick of the motel clock and the distant hum of passing trucks. Each voicemail grew shorter, angrier, then softer. The 20th one was different. Dean's voice cracked halfway through. "Dad, we didn't think you'd really go. We thought maybe you'd come back once you cooled down." Then silence. Not the line going dead, just breath. Shallow and guilty. And then came the last one. Diana's voice. Not smooth this time. No edge. Just one word. "Please." That night, I sat on the edge of the motel bed and unfolded the flag fully for the first time since leaving their house. Its corners were still sharp, its colors still deep. I laid it across the bed beside me and stared at it like it held the next chapter. And maybe it did. At sunrise, I took a walk. No destination, just steps. The street was quiet. A few cars passed. One honked faintly, as if recognizing me. I passed a hardware store. Its window displayed veteran discount posters. I paused, looked at the reflection of myself in the glass. I didn't look broken. I looked unfinished. Back at the motel, I noticed a note had been slipped under the door. It wasn't from the front desk. It was handwritten. "They've been asking around about you. Just a heads up. R. Rick." The co-worker from the barbecue still had a conscience, apparently. I tucked the note inside my wallet, right next to the emergency contact card that still listed Dean as son. Around 3 p.m., there was a knock. This one wasn't sharp, not demanding. It was hesitant. 3 soft taps. I didn't move, didn't even breathe. The knock came again, then silence. I walked slowly to the door and looked through the peephole. A figure stood there, shoulders slumped, head down, another figure behind them, taller, arms crossed. Dean and Diana. I didn't open the door. Not yet. I just stared through the glass at the son who once called me a burden and the woman who said I wasn't needed anymore. They didn't look angry. They looked like people who had finally checked the mailbox and found it empty. Behind that door stood desperation. But I wasn't ready to answer, not yet. I stayed behind the door, didn't open it, didn't flinch. Just watched as Dean shifted on his feet outside the motel room, his eyes darting toward the parking lot, like he was expecting someone to drag him back to where dignity lived. Diana stood behind him, arms folded, lips pressed tight, like someone trying to keep truth from spilling. I didn't answer that knock, but the next morning, I saw them again. It was early. The motel's continental breakfast hadn't even been unwrapped. I sat in the small lobby, reading yesterday's paper, coffee cooling in front of me. The folded flag was on the chair beside me, like it refused to stay hidden now. The bell above the glass door jingled. Dean walked in, then Diana. Their entrance quieted the 2 other guests, who had been talking over stale muffins and weak orange juice. The manager behind the desk paused, mid-keystroke. They didn't say anything at first, just stood there, facing me, in public, in silence. Dean broke first. "Can we talk?" I gestured to the empty chair across from me. Diana remained standing. "You shut everything down," he said. I said nothing. He leaned forward, elbows on knees. You've made your point. We're hurting. You win. I didn't know it was a contest, I said. He ran a hand through his hair. We didn't expect you to do all this. Cut off the mortgage, cancel the insurance, lock down your accounts. Diana snapped. You left us exposed. I looked at her, calm. You exposed yourselves. I just turned on the lights. She opened her mouth, then closed it. Dean reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a paper. I want to fix it. This. All of it. The house. The accounts. We can sort it out. Just sign off on this, and we'll transfer things back. I took the paper, skimmed it. Legal terms. Language softened by guilt, but still slick. You don't want to fix it, I said. You want to get out of what's coming. I made mistakes, Dean said, lowering his voice. But I didn't do this alone. Then his eyes flicked sideways. And that's when the twist came. Diana's voice cut through the lobby. Tell him what you did. Dean turned, eyes wide. What? You heard me, she said louder. Tell him about the second loan, the one I didn't know about. The room went still. The other two motel guests froze mid-chew. The manager looked down, pretending to work. Dean swallowed. That's not what this is about. Tell him. Her voice cracked. Not with anger, with betrayal. I saw the documents, she said. The second loan. The withdrawal from your crypto account. The credit card in my name. She turned to me. He lied to me too. Just like he lied to you. Dean stood, towering voice raised now. You said we were in this together. I said we needed to survive, she shouted back. Not steal from your father. Everyone was watching now. The room had become a stage, and Dean, the lead actor, had forgotten his lines. I built our future, he barked. With lies? She snapped. You used his name twice. You signed my name once, and then you blamed him when it all cracked. I stood, slowly, the flag under my arm, quiet and heavy. Dean looked at me, then at Diana. He tried one last time. I did it for us. No, I said. You did it because you thought I'd never say no. He stared at the floor. I turned to Diana. You knew. Not all of it, she whispered. But I didn't ask. I didn't want to know. And now, it's too late. I walked toward the door, but before I left, I turned back once more. To both of them. You broke a promise, I said. One I never heard you speak, but always assumed you kept. Dean looked up. What promise? That you'd never be the kind of son who turned his back on his own blood. Outside, the air was crisper than I remembered. The motel lot was quiet. But behind the glass, people were still frozen, still watching. For once, they weren't watching me. They were watching what he had become. And he knew it. As I stepped into the sunlight, I realized something. They weren't just desperate, they were exposed. And exposure has a way of making people dangerous. I had warned them without words. But now, I used ink. Legal ink. Official seals. The kind they used against me behind closed doors, only this time the doors would open. Ken, my lawyer, met me at the courthouse steps on a gray Thursday morning. He wore a brown overcoat and carried a manila folder, thick with consequence. You sure you want to do this? He asked. I looked at the flag tucked under my arm, no longer folded, now rolled carefully inside a clear case. Yes, I said. I'm done being polite. Inside, the clerk took our filings with little ceremony. Petition for revocation of financial access. Fraud complaint. Restraining request for coercive housing conditions. Emergency injunction to block deed transfer. Each page was a scalpel, not a sword. Anything else? She asked. Ken smiled. Actually, yes. Notarized statement fraudulent signature analysis from a handwriting expert. The clerk nodded, stamped the last form and said, You'll hear back in 72 hours. Or less if they panic first. They did. Less than 48 hours later, Dean's number lit up my phone. I didn't answer. Then came a blocked number. I picked up, just once. Mr. Halbridge? Yes. This is Officer Lane, with County PD. We've received a civil escalation notice. Your son has reported financial obstruction. I blinked. Obstruction? Yes, sir. Says you've interfered with accounts in a way that affects household dependents. Officer, I said calmly, my dependents are a flag and a motel key. Nothing else lives off me. There was silence. Then, a light chuckle. Got it. We'll note that. The next day, Ken sent an email with scanned confirmation. Temporary injunction approved. House deed frozen. Court date pending. I printed the email and pinned it beside the mirror in the motel room, right next to the flag. That weekend, I went to the church. Pastor Ray was mid-sermon, but paused when he saw me walk in. I didn't sit in the back. I walked all the way down front, folded flag in hand, and placed it on the pew beside me. After service, he came to me. You making a statement? He asked. Not really, I said. I'm just making things right. He nodded. Words gotten out. I bet. I heard about the filings. Folks are talking. Good, I said. Maybe it'll remind some of them who taught their sons to salute that flag in the first place. That night, I got another email. Diana, we were wrong. But don't drag us through court. We're still family. I didn't reply. But I saved it. Proof that guilt doesn't always come with apology, it comes with fear. At dawn, Ken called again. They filed a counterclaim, attempting to argue mental duress. I didn't blink. They're saying you had episodes prior to leaving. I've had exactly one episode, I said. Of clarity. Ken chuckled. You're going to win this. I didn't smile. This isn't about winning, Ken. It's about being counted. The next day, Officer Lane called again. Only this time, he wasn't neutral. Mr. Halbridge, your son tried to press formal charges, financial exploitation, of all things. And? They didn't hold. We reviewed your documents. You're clean. Thanks, officer. One more thing, he said. My dad served too. Korea. Lost his legs, but never his voice. Just wanted you to know, I get it. Back at the motel, the clerk handed me a letter, handwritten. No return address. Inside was a single sentence. You're doing what the rest of us were too afraid to. C. I didn't know who C was. But that letter sat right beside the flag for the rest of the week. They tried to paint me as confused. But now, their canvas is burning and my signature is the match. The house looked smaller than I remembered. Same bricks, same door, but the glow was gone. It had once been the warmest place I knew. Now, it looked like guilt with shutters. I didn't go there. I just passed by on my walk to the bank. No car in the driveway. Blinds closed. Porch light off on a weekday. That wasn't routine. That was retreat. Even from the sidewalk, I could feel it. Something inside had cracked. At the bank, the manager greeted me with something close to awe. Mr. Halbridge, he said, extending a firm hand. Glad you came in. You've heard, I said. He nodded. You're trending, in a way. He led me to his office, where I reviewed the final notice. All household ties to my accounts, assets, and insurance severed. The last thread had been cut. We've also flagged the home equity line for independent review, he added. Anonymous tip came in, but we traced it your daughter-in-law. She filed it after that motel incident. I nodded once. That explained Diana's silence. Sometimes, the truth doesn't split families. It simply reveals the cracks already there. 2 days later, I received an envelope. Unmarked. Left at the motel front desk. Inside was a folded letter. Lined paper. In Dean's handwriting. Dad, I didn't think it would come to this. I thought you'd let things go like you always did. Like when I dropped out the first semester. Like when I said Martha's recipes were outdated. Like when I told you I needed space. But you didn't let go this time. Now, everything's slipping. Diana's filed for a separate account. The neighbors whisper, Pastor won't return my calls. They're calling me the forgery son. You think I deserve that? Maybe I do. But this isn't just about pride anymore. I'm losing my job. The creditors are circling. That second loan, the next lines were scribbled out violently. I can't sleep. I can't think. All I see is that damn flag in my dreams. You holding it. Me dropping it. I didn't mean for any of this to happen. But I don't know how to undo it either. Dean. I read the letter twice. Not for apology. For clarity. There was no, I'm sorry. There was no ownership. Just erosion. He hadn't broken. He had melted. The motel clerk slid me another envelope the following day. This time, it was financial paperwork. From Diana, a breakdown of assets. A request for mediation. No explanation. No greeting. But in the margins was a scribble. I'm not protecting him anymore. That night, I returned to the church. Pastor Ray saw me walk in and came straight down the aisle before service began. You know about the job? He asked. I nodded. They let him go quietly. HR didn't want a scene. Of course they didn't, I said. Scenes are for people with dignity to lose. He hesitated, then said, he asked for prayer last week. Did you give it to him? I told him prayer comes after confession. I looked at the stained glass window, light bending in blues and reds. What if confession's a performance? I asked. Pastor Ray didn't answer. Maybe he didn't know. Later that night, I sat in my motel room and unfolded the flag again. It lay across the bed, strong as ever. It hadn't lost shape, even when everything else had. Their house still stood, but the walls inside had fallen. And this time, I wasn't the one who needed shelter. It started with a whisper in the church parking lot. Then it showed up in the diner. Then in line at the pharmacy. People weren't whispering about me anymore. They were whispering about my son. He forged his own dad's name? I heard it was 2 loans. They said he tried to flip the deed behind his back. He did all that to the man who gave him the house? By Thursday, the stories had turned into something else. Truth, wrapped in shame. But it wasn't my shame anymore. I walked into the barber shop just after lunch. Old-timers were lined up on cracked leather seats. Football on the TV. Smell of aftershave in the air. The chatter dropped when I stepped in. Then someone stood. Mr. Halbridge, take my seat. It was Jerry. Vietnam vet. Guy who once called my brother a hero in front of a whole parade crowd. I'm all right, Jerry. No, he said. You're not just all right. You're owed. I sat down. The flag stayed in my lap, rolled neatly, like always. Tommy the barber didn't say much. Just nodded at the reflection of the flag in the mirror. They tried to tear you down, he muttered. Didn't work. I didn't raise a son to turn like that, I said softly. Didn't raise him alone either, he replied. The world pulls hard. Sometimes it wins. The next day, I stopped by the small grocery on 3rd and Lincoln. The cashier, young guy with long hair and a cross tattoo, rang up my coffee and newspaper. Then he paused. My dad left when I was 6, he said. Never looked back. I used to hate every old man that walked in here. He handed me the change. But then I heard what happened with your son. What you did. He smiled. I'm starting to rethink what a father actually looks like. Back at the motel, a letter had been slipped under my door. Again. No envelope this time. Just one folded sheet. You were never the villain. We tried to make you one because it was easier than facing what we did. He's still lying to everyone else, maybe even to himself. But not to me anymore. This flag used to mean formality. Now it means backbone. I don't expect forgiveness. But I do want you to know, I see it now. You stood still. We fell. D. No full name. But it didn't need one. Diana had changed her pen. And maybe her place in the story. Sunday came. I wore my cleanest shirt and walked into the church with my shoulders back. No slouch. No disguise. The whispers died when I stepped in. Pastor Ray saw me from the pulpit, paused his greeting. Then he said something he hadn't said in over a year. Welcome home, Brother Halbridge. And the church echoed with soft, reverent claps. I sat in the third row, not the back, not the side. When the offering plate came around, I didn't drop cash. I dropped something else. A folded copy of the court's injunction marked active. A few people saw it. Their eyes widened, not in fear, in realization that man's still fighting. After service, a boy about 8 walked up to me while his mom waited nearby. "You fought in a war?" he asked, staring at the case under my arm. "No," I said. "My brother did. I fought for something else." "What?" I looked down at him. "My name. They called me bitter. But now the town calls me something else, Father." It came in a manila envelope, hand-delivered. No signature, no return address. Inside was the original deed to the house, the one with my name and Martha's. No Dean, no Diana. Just us, etched in black ink across yellowing paper. The letter that came with it was short. I took it out of his desk. "He doesn't know I made a copy. If you still want the house, it's yours to take back." In mark, it wasn't revenge. It was repentance. I took it to Ken that same morning. He looked it over, eyes narrowing at the notary mark in the corner. "It's real," he said. "Older than the refinance. Trumps it. What about the forged one? Pending fraud investigation. This one beats that timeline. What happens now?" He looked at me like a man measuring something heavier than documents. "You own the house again." That night, I stood outside the home I had once built nail by nail. The porch light flickered. The flag, rolled neatly in its case, pressed against my side like a final witness. I knocked once. Diana answered. She looked thinner, not sick, just stripped down. "Dean's not here," she said. "I know," I said. "This visit's not for him." She opened the door wider. We sat in silence for several minutes in the living room. Same furniture, same rug. But the air felt new, like something had finally escaped. I placed the deed on the coffee table. She stared at it. "I always thought this place would save us," she said quietly. "It didn't," I replied. "No," she whispered, "but you might." She pulled something from the drawer beside her. It was the folded flag, the original, not the case version I carried. "I kept it after you left. Didn't feel right, but I couldn't throw it away either." She handed it to me like it weighed more than it looked. I took it, held both the house and the flag. And in that moment, I understood what this war had really been about. It wasn't just money. It wasn't just pride. It was home. Who gets to define it? Who deserves to lose it? And who's strong enough to protect it? "I'm giving it back to you," Diana said. "All of it." I shook my head slowly. "No." She looked stunned. I stood, walked to the small display shelf above the fireplace, and placed the folded flag right in the center. Then I turned. "You're staying." "What?" "You, not him." She stammered, unsure. "I'm going to sell the house," I said. "But not yet. Not before you get your own name on something that matters." "You're giving me time?" "No. I'm giving you dignity." The next morning, I met Ken at the county office. Signed, "The transfer reversal." Set a hold on the sale. Dean called that afternoon. Block number. I didn't answer. But he left a message. "You think this is over? You think you get to erase me from everything? You'll die with that house, old man, and I'll be the one left standing." I didn't respond. I didn't need to, because I wasn't standing. I was rooted. I went back to the church later that week, placed a donation under a new name, to rebuild what I once handed away too easily. Signed, "A father reclaimed." He wanted the house. I wanted a home. One of us lost. The other finally understood what the flag was guarding all along. They didn't knock this time. They waited. Outside the church. I'd just come out of the morning men's group, where Pastor Ray had asked me to close in prayer. I had barely said amen before I saw them standing there, Dean and Diana. No makeup, no pretense. Just shadows under their eyes and something like hope in their posture. Dean stepped forward. He didn't speak right away. Neither did I. The folded flag sat under my arm like it always did now. He didn't look at it. He looked at the ground. Then he said, "We were wrong." 3 words. He thought they were enough. "I gave you love," I said calmly. "You gave me paperwork." His mouth opened, closed again. Diana cleared her throat. "I knew about the second loan. Not from the start, but early enough." I said nothing. "That's on me." I nodded. She continued, "I stayed silent because I thought it would all work out. Because I didn't think you'd leave or fight back. You'd always absorbed things. You mistook silence for permission," I said. She blinked hard. Dean finally found his voice. "I lost the job. I know. I'm on probation. They're watching my credit activity. The fraud filing flagged me. I can't get approved for a lease." "I know." He took a shaky breath. "We just want to come back. Just until we find our footing." I looked at them. Really looked. They were older now. Not by years, but by failure. They weren't asking for forgiveness. They were asking for shelter. And not once did they say they'd earn it. "I spent 30 years building a roof over you," I said. "And you tried to bury me under it." Dean shook his head. "I didn't mean, but you did it," I cut in. "Intentions don't excuse outcomes. You meant to take what wasn't yours. You thought being my son meant being entitled." He looked down again. I let the silence stretch until it started to itch. Then I said, "There's a halfway house 3 blocks from the motel. Veteran-owned. Cheap, safe, no credit check. I already left your name there." Dean's head snapped up. "You're paying for that?" "No," I said. "I arranged it. You're paying for it." Diana's voice wavered. "What about the house? What about it? Can we come back?" I looked her dead in the eyes. "Do you even want to?" She froze. I reached into my coat pocket and pulled out 2 envelopes. One for each of them. They hesitated before taking them. Inside, copies of the withdrawal paperwork, official notice of inheritance suspension, and a note, handwritten. "You're not being punished. You're being reminded of how quickly gifts become assumptions when gratitude disappears. Dad." Dean looked up. Tears welled, but they didn't fall. "I miss how it used to be." "So do I," I said. "But nostalgia isn't a time machine. It's a mirror. And right now, you need to look at yourself." I turned to leave. Diana said, "Will we ever be family again?" I paused. The flag pressed tight against my side. Then I said, "Family isn't blood, it's protection. When you start hurting the people who protected you, you stop being family." They came looking for shelter. I offered them something harder: accountability. It happened on a Saturday. The moving truck pulled up to the curb at 8 a.m. sharp. No neighbors came to help. No casseroles. No small talk. Dean and Diana carried their things in silence. Box after box. Room after room. They packed it all, except the thing that mattered most. I stood across the street, not hiding, not gloating, just present. The way I always had been. The folded flag sat in the front passenger seat of my truck, upright in its clear case, watching the whole thing unfold with the same stillness it had held through war, death, marriage, and betrayal. By noon, the truck pulled away. Dean looked back once, not at me, at the house. His shoulders slumped, not from the weight of the boxes, but from the realization that ownership and belonging were 2 very different things. The new owner arrived 20 minutes later. Single mom, 2 kids, local nurse. She'd read the story in the paper. She didn't say much when I handed her the keys, just looked me in the eye and said, "Thank you for fighting for something worth passing down." Then she looked at the flag. "You're keeping that, right?" "I am," I said. "That's not just a memory," she smiled. "That's a lesson." The next day, Pastor Ray asked if I wanted to speak during service. I declined. But I stood in the back as he said, "Some men build homes. Others build legacies. Mr. Halbridge did both." And when the time came, he fought not with fists, but with principle. There was no applause, just heads bowed in respect. The way soldiers salute, without words. After the service, a teenage boy walked up to me, probably no older than 15. He stared at the case tucked under my arm. Was that your brother's? It was. He earned all those stars? Yes, I said. And so did I. He tilted his head. But you didn't serve, right? I looked down at him. I served in a different war, I said. The kind that comes for your name, your dignity, and your house. He nodded slowly, then asked, Did you win? I smiled. For the first time in weeks. I'm still standing, aren't I? Back at the motel, I packed my things. Didn't need the room anymore. The flag went in last, still pristine, still sharp-edged, still sacred. Before I locked the door behind me, I placed one final item on the nightstand. The very first letter Dean had sent me, the one without an apology. It would stay there for the next old man who needed a reason not to give up. As I pulled out of the lot, the motel clerk waved. You heading home? I paused, then smiled. No, I said. I'm building one. The truck stopped one last time in front of the old house. I stepped out, walked up to the porch, hung something new on the door. Not a wreath, not a nameplate, just a simple wood plaque, carved by hand. 3 words burned deep into the grain. Honor was enough. And right below it, mounted with reverence, sat the folded flag.